I'm going to talk about a bunch of mistakes that if you've ever had a drum teacher before, they've probably made a few of these, and I, as a drum teacher, have made all of these mistakes. So if you are looking to get a drum teacher, or if you're looking to be a drum teacher, I'm going to tell you about these mistakes so that you can look not to make them or not to find a teacher who makes them. Getting distracted. This sounds most like me when I teach. I think it's just because you sit behind a drum kit and you have so much potential of what you can do that it is really difficult to just hone it in and keep it there. So when you're teaching, you don't want to make a mistake of playing your own things, kind of showing students what you can do on the kit, because they're there to learn for themselves. If you teach them how to play something and then you take that thing too far, you play it too complicated, or you orchestrate it in a way that a student won't understand, will go over their head. So don't get distracted and get too invested in something. Rather let students understand the basic form of something before you take it further. Another form of getting distracted is explaining things that have absolutely no relevance. If you have a beginner student, if you explain quintuplets to him, he's not going to care, he's not going to understand it, and it's just going to waste his time. It's going to waste your own time too, because you're not going to get any results out of that. So don't get distracted by explaining things that have no relevance to the topic that you're going through in that lesson. Not backing your skills with knowledge. This is something that many drum teachers actually struggle with. Not everyone is born to be a teacher, but everyone can learn to be a teacher. But what tends to happen is a lot of really good players, they can play fantastic things on the drum kit, but they don't know how to break it down so that someone can understand it and then learn to play it. So a big mistake as a drum teacher is not backing your skills with the knowledge of how to develop them. If you want to show a student something, you need to know exactly how to break it down for them to easily grasp it. Explaining things well is a skill, you need to build it up. The more you explain things, the better you'll get at it. I've had to teach people how to play basic rock beats for I don't know how long, but I know that I'm better at teaching it than I was 5 years ago. Just make sure you try your best to explain everything in a way that your drum students can easily understand. If you are the student, make sure your teacher is good at explaining things to you. If he's explaining things that you don't understand, you need to tell him so that he can explain it in a better way. Staying on the practice pad for too long. Most beginner drummers hate the practice pad. It is just what it is. If you love the practice pad and you just started drumming, then you are better than most of us. A mistake that I see teachers make, and one that I've made myself, is keeping students on a practice pad for way too long. Let me just tell you, as a student who just started playing drums, banging out single strokes on a practice pad is incredibly boring. Students want to come in, they want to learn how to play to their favorite songs. So keeping them on a practice pad, they're not actually going to understand the usefulness of it just yet. So the best thing to do is get them playing and then supplement that with the practice pad playing. But don't stick on the practice pad, don't keep them there. I've heard of teachers that only teach on the practice pad for a year before moving on to the kit. If I was that student, I'd be out of there so quickly. Being a babysitter. This is not quite a mistake in the same sense as all these others, but a very real thing that drum teachers deal with is becoming a babysitter unnecessarily. A lot of parents like to send their kids off to music lessons even though the kids aren't interested. They don't want to actually learn how to play drums. The parents just love that they can send them off for an hour and then they can go do their own thing. And in that hour, it's your job to entertain this child. If the child doesn't want to play drums, you end up being a babysitter. So that's a big mistake that I've taken before, is taking on students that actually just don't want to be there. I know sometimes it's good to earn the money, but it's not worth it in the long run. My suggestion is to either try your best to make the student passionate about learning drums, make them want to learn the drums, or be very selective with your students. all fun, no work. I'm going to tell you about a story that really highlights this for me. What I mean by all fun, no work is that some teachers will not correct bad habits, not correct mistakes. As long as you're having fun on the kit, go for it. Just play whatever you want. We'll have a good time. You come next week, we'll have a good time again. Some teachers are like this, and I don't think it's valuable, especially when you're not correcting techniques and things like that. So having all fun and no work, that is not a teacher that you want to go to, because the point of a teacher is you're paying them to put you on the right path. A teacher that's all fun and no work is not going to give you a path to walk on in the first place. A story in mind is where I live in South Africa. We have these things called Eisteddfods, where schools will enter music students into competitions. And then there'll be like drummers, there'll be like pianists, guitarists, violinists, all those types of instruments. But there was this one very specific occasion where this one drummer, who was obviously like a beginner drummer entering this competition, she was playing with her drumsticks like this. Like this. And the teacher was just there in the crowd like. That is probably the worst example of like bad technique I've ever seen. This is a very good point to why one big mistake is to have all fun and no work, no accountability. On the other side of that is all work and no fun. So you kind of need to find a balance, but the all work, no fun is a teacher that just makes you bang out rudiments. They just make you like read these exercises to play. If you walk in there and you ask them, you want to play your own song, like this is your favorite song, how do you play it? They're going to be like, well, that's not in the syllabus. Let's do what we're supposed to do and bang out these techniques so that you get good at that. And you walk out of every lesson not having a good time. That is also a mistake that you need to avoid in drum teachers. Some of them are very serious. I've found that the best thing is to have a balance. You need to have fun sometimes and then you need to work sometimes. The last mistake to mention would be when teachers notate everything. And I mean everything. This is something that is very common in school environments. Just because I understand it, I'm a school teacher, how we teach drums in a school environment is very academic. You learn academically, so there needs to be a way of grading, there needs to be a way of like marking students. But a problem that I've seen with this is, as a teacher, when you notate everything, a beginner drummer who learns with you is going to be bound by the fact that they can only read music. They can't just jam on the drums. A story related to that is I used to have this student where I used to teach academically at a high school, and I started just improvising, and he was like, oh man, that's so cool that you can just freestyle like that. And I was like, but that's what all drummers do. And he was like, but you only teach me to read. And then I was like, oh snap. Okay. So then I very quickly had to change my teaching style. I was teaching these kids just how to read, because that's how we were marking them. But as a drummer, you need to be able to just sit and play with any band. Like most of the time, you're not going to see charts in the real world. So just notating and reading everything can be very harmful. So if your teacher just does that, you need to start asking him to give you improv lessons, because that can take you very far in the drum world. It will take you way further than it will on other instruments where you actually do need to read. So yeah, those are my mistakes. Try not to make them yourself, and also try not to find a teacher who makes those types of things. We live and we learn as drummers, so these things are going to come up every now and then, but just be aware of them. One last thing, I have a Patreon page. If you love all my videos where I just post notation and the grooves, I put all those grooves in like easy to read PDF forms on that Patreon. If you sign up there, you can download that. It's just to make it easier for you to practice. And it also supports me and the channel big time. Cool, I'll see you in the next one.